How's it going, everyone? We are live here talking about Google Summer of Code 2022 with the Julia language. I'm super lucky that we have two folks here with us to help answer questions, and we'll definitely be taking questions as this live stream goes on. We're going to kick off with just hearing about Luca and Anant's experience doing Google Summer of Code with the Julia language, and then again, as folks have questions, feel free to toss those into the chat, and we'll be monitoring those. So we already have a bunch of people joining us and being part of the stream. So thanks everyone for being here. Luca, do you want to get started and just talk about when you did Google Summer of Code, the project you worked on, suggestions as far as the application experience, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I am Luca Ferranti, and I participated in Google Summer of Code the last year in 2021. For my project, I did it, well, in the Julia language, and particularly in the Julia intervals, sub-organization of Julia, if you want. And I developed this interval in algebra.gl package during the program. And yeah, of course, the experience was very good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. And regarding the application, I think the most important part is like discuss beforehand with your mentor and ask feedback about that. And actually don't spend too much time writing the application. So let your code and your practice speak for yourself. So the application shouldn't take too much time, like, I don't know, 1-2 hours, or shouldn't be too long, at least. Just get in touch with people, get started, open issues, open pull requests, comment, be active on repositories, on coding, GitHub, and let your open source activity speak for yourself. That's like the best for the application. Yeah, I hope it's helpful, and glad to ask any other questions.
Yeah, Luca, I love that. We'll dive in and talk more specifics. But Anant, I know you're maybe having connection trouble. Do you want to give us a quick intro and when you participated in Google Summer of Code, what your project was, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. I think my internet issues are mostly fixed now. So I'm Anant. I'm an undergrad in my final year, majoring in computer science from Bangalore, India. And I was also a GSoC student, not a JSoC, a GSoC student with the Julia language. The organization or the ecosystem that I was contributing to was Camellia. I think on the GSoC page, it's still listed as deepchem.jl, but then we'll update that soon enough. And my project was called Tight Binding Neural Networks, which is basically implementing this idea called orbital graph convolutional neural networks, which is in layman's terms to say, so in convolutional networks, you usually have node features as well in whatever object that you're trying to model. So that particular featureization, you also embed information about the atomic orbitals of the respective elements and the respective nodes in the given molecule. So this was my overarching project. To an extent, I got started on it. I think I mostly was focused on the research side of things. At the same time, the entire Camellia ecosystem was also undergoing a major refactor. So I also helped greatly contribute to that. I was a GSoC student last year. The way I got started was by getting started with documentation. I basically just cold mailed my mentor saying that, okay, so I found this on the Julia page and I'm very interested in this. I'd like to get started on this. And she said, okay, the documentation is a great part because we basically have none of it right now. So documentation was a great way to get started. And a few months in after contributing, I sort of realized, oh, I found this on the GSoC page. Might as well apply for GSoC, right? Like there's no harm. And then I applied and then I got in. And it was a great few months. It was great exposure to the language itself, and especially, I must say, to the community, which has been an amazing experience so far.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think I'm excited to see folks who have questions, and really quickly wanted to remind folks that if you have questions, please send them in, add them in the comments, and that way we can get Luca and Anant to answer those for us. But let's kick off, and something that I've been thinking a lot about recently with respect to Google Summer of Code is the whole sort of mentor-mentee process, and like how, like what did you two do when you were reaching out to prospective mentors? Like how did you approach that? Did you just message them on Slack, or were you doing code contributions beforehand and then message them afterwards, or something like that? Can you elaborate, Luca? I'll start with you about what that process was like.
Yeah. So actually, before doing GSoC last year, I also was in GSoD, the summer CSoC documentation the year before. And my mentor was the same. So I guess the more interesting question is how I contacted the first time. And yeah, I literally just showed up from the internet. I sent it. He is like David Sanders. He's involved in these Julia intervals packages. And I just sent him a message. Hi, I like the topic. I found it very interesting. And I see you have like this, there's the GSoC coming, and I would be interested in contributing and participating. Are you planning to apply as mentor? We could develop. So yeah, just a straight face, sent him a message. He never heard of me before. I never heard of him before, just dared. And that's how it started. So don't be scared. People in open source don't bite. And they're most of the times like very, very friendly. So just dare to contact.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's a lot of power in just reaching out to people randomly on the internet, and I think David is awesome. And I think probably having him as your mentor for Google Season of Docs and then Google Summer of Code was probably awesome. He's super great every time I've gotten a chat with him. Anat, you want to talk about same thing about how you sort of were able to reach out to folks to be your mentor, ways that you approach that kind of stuff? You're still muted at the moment.
Okay, I'm muted now. 100% agree with what Luca was saying about open source people not biting, because the way I approached who became my mentor was a bit unconventional. When I approached her, she was Rachel Kirchin. She's a postdoc at CMU. When I approached her, I had I wasn't really planning on applying for GSoC, JSoC, any of that. I just had gotten started with Julia then, and I actually wanted to get some real experience contributing to an actual package, because I felt that would help me learn the language much better. So, and then, like I said, after a point, we just realized, okay, I just found this project from the project section under GSoC on the website. So might as well apply for it, right? And she was more than happy to be my mentor. And yeah, it was a great few months. And also, the way I approached her wasn't on Slack or anything. At that point, I didn't even really know that the Julia Lang Slack existed. She was the one who told me that there's something like this. So I just cold mailed her right out of the blue, and she was kind enough to respond. And we sort of had conversations going back and forth, and then that's how that.
Yeah, that's and honestly, Rachel is another amazing mentor. So I think you both probably, hopefully, had a great experience, because I think Rachel and David are both awesome. And I think the takeaway for folks is, not from your comments, is like there is a Julia Lang Slack. That is where a lot of these conversations take place. We also have a Zulip channel, which is sort of the open source alternative to Slack. You can see all this stuff if you go to the Julia Lang website. Under the community tab, there's all of the different channels where Julia conversations and things like that are happening. So I think we have this listed on the GSoC student guidelines now. Like, what you're supposed to do is join the JSoC channel on Slack and be part of that conversation. So 100% would agree. Join the Slack, have those conversations, reach out to people. And I think, again, from my perspective, the suggestion I'll give to folks is the mentors are really busy, maintaining open source projects, doing their job, answering other questions from students. So try to do as much as you can to sort of take away the burden from the mentors. Like, Google as much stuff as you can. Look up all, like, if your question is like, what's the timeline for Google Summer of Code? Like, don't send that question to your mentor. Go and, Google that question, try and find the answer before you go and try and take your mentor's direct time to have that question answered. This is great, though. I think we've got our third panel member, Saranjit, joining us. Saranjit, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you? So nice to be
I'm
here.
doing great. Saturday morning, nothing better that I'd want to be doing than talking about Julia stuff. Sanjay, you want to give us a quick intro when you did Google Summer of Code or Julia Summer of Code, and any sort of and what your project was.
Yes, so I was a part of Google Summer of Code 2020 with the Julia Language Organization, and I was working with the Turing team at that time. I worked on a project to build proposals for nested sampling algorithm. So yeah, it was GSoC 2020.
Nice. Who can you the question that Luca and Anat were just answering was about any specific suggestions, or like how did you reach out to your mentor? Any suggestions for that as far as like getting in contact with the mentor, ways of engaging with them, that sort of stuff?
Uh, so I started communicating with the potential mentors through the Julia Slack. So the topic that I put forth my idea that I'm interested in this topic, and I was looking for mentors through the Slack. And then there are really very helpful people on the Julia Slack that are very supportive, and they can guide you to the person who can help you further. So that was how I started.
Nice. I love that. I think I'm seeing at least one question come in from Ashwani asking any specific proposal related guidelines, and I think I can generally answer this, but also interested to hear from all three of you about how you all put together your proposal. But in general, from the Julia languages side, we do have specific proposal guidelines. They're on the website. If you go to the GSoC tab on the website, and then you go to there's an applications guidelines section, and that has all of the specific format stuff that we want, and also the specific pieces of the application that we want you to answer. So definitely check that out. It's on the website. I can send a link in the chat for folks. But interested in Anat, if you're here, potentially we'll start with you this time. How did you go about doing your proposal? Was there any specific tips or suggestions that you'd give a GSoC student who's applying on how to put together the best proposal possible?
Really, just one major tip that I have with respect to everything GSoC related is communicate with your mentor, because I feel like that's the most important part of the entire process that a lot of people often overlook. So what I did was, like I said, I didn't really go into this with the notion that I need to do GSoC at this project, right? Just something that came up. So the way so Rachel and I had a discussion about what she would like to see done in this ecosystem, like what she thinks are potential things that we should be solving, and potential things that we need to be doing to enable the ecosystem to be richer and more full-fledged thing. So we first had that conversation, and then, like you said, I did a lot of research. I came up with a draft proposal based off whatever guidelines were on the website. And then I shared it with her, sort of gave her a preview of what my proposal was going to be, and she was very helpful in that regard. She gave a lot of useful feedback. I incorporated those feedback, and it's sort of a cycle, right? So I sort of review, and she reviews it again, then I incorporate more changes, and that just makes the proposal all the more better. So I'd say one thing is communicate with your mentor, because that's the most important thing. Happy mentor, happy you. Because if your mentor is happy with your project, then even if it doesn't get accepted for GSoC or JSoC, it's a great project, right? And that's something you should be doing regardless.
And I love that. I think happy mentor, happy you might be a tagline for GSoC in general. Like, I think so much of the experience of GSoC depends on your mentor, and I think having a really positive sort of communication between you two is super important. Saranjit, anything you want to add on to proposal suggestions?
Yes, so the most important one is to get feedback from the community Slack. So once you have a draft ready, you can share it on the community Slack, and there are people, not just your mentor, but there are many other people who would be happy to provide you a general feedback on the structure. If you also um want specific feedback, then please feel free to share it with your mentor as well. Uh, try to get some time with your mentor where you are discussing your proposal before actually writing it. So if you discuss it well enough, it will always reduce the time that is required in the future when you need to mold it. So, and yes, uh, try to provide a timeline on your proposal, so that is also very helpful.
Yeah, Sanjit, I love that. And I think especially getting feedback from the community. Like I know I don't want to sign you three up to do work, but like there's tons of former GSoC students who are in the different channels on Slack. We have, a bunch of GSoC alumni who are now mentors and things like that. So people are really happy to help. So posting your proposal in the Slack channel, getting feedback from the community, I think can really be a super important piece. And another aspect of it too is that a huge part of Google Summer of Code is being involved in the community. And I think it's a really good sign to see from a mentor's perspective, hey, this person put the proposal in, they got community feedback about how to make it better, how it better aligns with the community's strategic technical goals, things like that. And I think it can really bode well for students who are applying if they do get that feedback. So I love that, Saranjit. Luca, you wanna add anything else?
Yeah, I agree. I can maybe add what I briefly mentioned at the beginning, that don't focus too much on the writing. I think also Chris mentioned last year in Slack that you must open at least a few pull requests to show the code. So it's really about coding, and you don't need to be like a super pro software engineer at the beginning, but you need to show that you are not afraid of open PRs, or that you understand that it's important to document the code or to have unit tests or this kind of stuff. And so get started. It's pretty cool in open source. You don't really need to ask permission to start helping. So you can just open issues and open PRs and ask for your mentor. Ask, do you have like any issues that would be like not too challenging at the moment, that I can get done in reasonable time, but not too trivial, that could show my skills. That's actually what I did with David. He gave me, like I said, okay, in this package at the moment there are like these issues, like this code is very slow, this code is not working, this is a bug which is pretty annoying. So start with getting those fixed, and then you can show off in the proposals that you actually are already involved in the community, and they have like some code visualization of what you have been doing. So don't start coding the night before, let's say. Let's start helping. And yeah.
Yeah, Luca, I love that. And I actually think I agree with you. It's, in general for folks, I think it's worth saying that there's this tension in GSoC, and GSoC is designed to help get students involved in open source, but then also mentors and organizations a lot of time ask for students to show some evidence to them that they know how to program and they know how to contribute to open source. So it's weird that it's advertised as this avenue to start contributing to open source, but then you show up as a contributor and people are like, oh, we want you to already have done some work before. So I can understand from a student's perspective that it's a little bit weird and it's a little bit confusing. But Luca, I totally agree with you. Like, as much evidence as you can show in your proposal that you know how to contribute, you have some, not expertise, but you have some ability to actually make contributions. That's going to really help your proposal. If you don't have any code contributions specific, it's probably unlikely that you'll get selected for Google Summer of Code. So it's worth thinking about how you can, start today, make a few of those contributions. It doesn't have to be anything super big.
Another thing I'd like to add is that while community and usually mentors are quick to give reviews on your proposals, I don't think you should expect it as a given from them, because everyone's really busy. And I mean, you should respect and be sensitive to that as well. So also don't be disheartened if people aren't like commenting on your proposals yet or something.
No, I totally agree. That's a totally fair point. Like, your mentor may not have the bandwidth right now to give you a review of the proposal before Google Summer of Code. I think you should make it available to them. Like, I think that's the biggest piece. Like, if you don't send it to them and they do have the bandwidth, and then they're reviewing it when the application actually comes in, they're like, wait a second, I never saw this before. This is completely new to me. I think that could be a problem. So make it available to them. Post it publicly on the GSoC channel. tag your mentor to see if they can have time to review it. But yeah, definitely don't go in with the expectation that they're going to spend 5 hours giving you feedback on your proposal. I think that's a great point.
Another thing that you could do is actually to read through some of the previous proposals that are already present. Uh, that will also give you a rough idea to how to begin writing the proposal. I know there are some changes this time, but you can always refer to the previous year proposals and get some ideas.
Yeah, Saranjit, I don't know if we have any of those proposals online, but if you three want to share, you can put them on the Julia website if you wanted to, or if you want to send them on Slack, if you're comfortable sharing, feel free to, just to give folks sort of an example of obviously successful Google Summer of Code applications, since all three of you were chosen and selected. So feel free to do that. Yeah, other folks who are listening, feel free to reach out. You can see the list of Google Summer of Code students that were accepted in previous years on the website. So you can reach out to those folks and ask to see successful applications if you're interested in that as well. So Mert's making a comment about seeing other organizations' example proposals, but we didn't see Julia's. So Mert, I would suggest you take a look at the application guidelines link that I sent. And if that doesn't answer the question, feel free to post in the GSoC channel. But I think that link that I sent does give you the right stuff to actually get the application in. So if it's unclear, feel free to post again, and we'll try to get the questions answered for you. Another question: Will the contributions projects on GSoC be available out of GSoC for students that want to contribute later? Yeah, so the GSoC and JSoC are just ways of helping get financial contributions to students, to contributors in general who want to participate in open source. So if you have the bandwidth and time and you want to just tackle a GSoC project without being part of GSoC and not getting paid to do it, then yeah, that's totally cool. You're welcome to do that. And I think something to keep in mind is, doing stuff like that can potentially be really helpful in getting selected for GSoC in future years. Like a lot of people who are unsuccessful the first time they apply for GSoC, they end up making some open source contributions over the course of the next year. They applied the second time around and they get selected. So I don't know if any of you went through that process, but I've 100% met people who applied the first time for Google Summer of Code, didn't get in, made contributions, came back a second time, and they got in after making some open source contributions. Yeah, I don't know. Did all of you get in on your first application? Yeah, awesome. So it can be either. I mean, I think it's super positive. It doesn't. You might get accepted your first time. You might not, and I think that's just the nature of it. So going in with the mentality that you're there, and I think Anat, you mentioned this before, but like going in with the mentality that you're there to contribute to open source. It would be great if you got selected for GSoC because it's a cool program, but really the goal is to contribute to open source. And it's gonna, whether or not you're part of GSoC, you're gonna get all that benefit. You're still gonna have this, proof of work. You're gonna be able to send in a job application and show them that you made these open source contributions, things like that. So yeah, I would go in with the mentality that you're there to contribute to open source, not that you're there to be a part of Google Summer of Code necessarily. But a great question nonetheless. Another question. Considering a project is a large scale one, 300 hours, is there a possibility that more than one person will get selected for the project? This is a good question. I think this is the 300-hour versus the 175-hour thing is new to GSoC this year, I believe. Last year, we only had 175-hour projects, if I recall correctly. And then the year before that, it was only 300-hour, but they didn't really put the hour number on it. It was just like GSoC, like you do the project and there was no hour specified. So I don't think that mentors will be splitting up 300-hour projects. I think it's specifically the reason they have these different hour amounts is to make GSoC more flexible for students. So if you're a student who knows that you have other commitments this summer and you don't have full-time availability for 18 weeks or 16 weeks, whatever it is, like that's why the 175-hour project exists, so that you can still be a part of GSoC and do your summer school class and travel on vacation for 2 weeks or whatever it is. So I don't think that we'll be splitting the 300-hour projects between multiple students if more than one person applies. So yeah, hopefully, RB, that answers the question for you.
Actually, I'd like to quickly pitch in. So in the previous iterations of GSoC, I know that there have been a few projects for other organizations like the Linux Foundation and so on and so forth, that multiple students have worked on the same project, but then that has been largely dependent on the students itself deciding to coordinate and the mentor. So it might be much harder, but then I think it largely depends on your bandwidth and your mentor's bandwidth and you finding someone who's willing to do that. It's not a guarantee, but I mean, no harm in trying, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. It's also possible, depending, like the challenges for a mentor, like if one of these projects was to be split up, it would have to be sort of coordinated in advance. Like it's unlikely that two people are going to apply with the exact same proposal and the mentor is just going to automatically be like, oh, okay, well, we'll just split this up between two people. If you took a larger project and someone applied for 175 hours of it and another person did some other piece of it, like that could be the way that it's split up, but it's not. I don't think that the mentors are just going to do that implicitly if two people apply for the same project, because again, the reason that the 300 versus 175 hours exists is to give students flexibility. So if someone applies for 300 hours, it means that's how much time they have available. Therefore, that's how much time we should give them to work on Google Summer of Code. Yeah, so great question. Another one coming in. I'm asking this as I honestly do not feel I have enough Julia knowledge, but I have enough experience working in open source code bases and contributions. What do you think? So interesting to hear from all three of you. Where were you in your Julia journey, I guess, is the best way to put it. When you applied for Google Summer of Code, did you already have a bunch of Julia specific knowledge, or was it really like I had knowledge in Python and R and I was just getting started in the Julia community? So interested to hear. I think, Luca, you were doing Google seasonal docs before, so maybe you had some Julia knowledge already.
Yeah, I had some Julia experience, but it's actually fun because every time I was getting started, I thought, yeah, I have enough Julia experience. But then during the process, I realized, oh, actually, I didn't have that much experience, and I learned a lot during the journey. So I guess it's normal. It's you don't need a lot of, or you don't need much like Julia specific like coding knowledge, as long as you have some experience. That's very valuable. Then you can learn during the process, because you don't need to know everything at the very beginning. You can learn during the process. And so, yeah, I definitely wasn't expert when I started GSoC. I wasn't expert when I started GSoC. I don't know if I'm expert now, but every time I think I have good experience, then I interact with new people and I chat on Slack and I learn a bunch of new cool things. And I was like, oh, there's actually a lot I didn't know. And so
that's every time I do Julia stuff, I'm like, wow, there's actually a lot that I don't know. So I'm with you on that, Luca. Saranjit, where were you in your sort of Julia journey when you applied for GSoC?
So I was more into R and Python at that time, and not so much into Julia. I did. So most of the skills were transferable. So I was learning to code and write those codes for quite some time in Julia, but I would not say that it was comparable to how much I could do in R or Python. So when I had applied and when I came out of GSoC, there was a huge learning difference, and the things that I learned, not just about Julia but also about contributing to open source, making pull requests in a good manner, and collaborating using Git. So it was a very steep learning journey for me. yeah, so I can say that I started from basic level with Julia and when I had applied for GSoC.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Sranji, do you think anything specifically that you did in your application like helped, or do you have any tips on like if somebody's in the same position as you, maybe they've used other languages, they've made other contributions, but they haven't yet done that in the Julia context? Like, how can you demonstrate that you have the interest and the ability to actually make those Julia contributions?
Yes. So when I had applied, I mostly highlighted the work in theory that I had done. So I had done quite a lot of study in that area using R, and I had communicated this with my mentor that I have worked with R previously on this topic, and now I want to move into Julia. So that is where I started, and I was very open with my mentors that this is where I stand with my knowledge in Julia. But yes, with time, they were very supportive, and with time, I kept on learning the concepts as they came by.
Yes, Ranjit, I actually think I remember, and this is maybe a good, I remember your application. I think this might be a good suggestion for other people as well, too. Like, if you don't have that deep Julia working knowledge, like highlight your deep knowledge of the domain that you're working in. Like, I think Sanjay, you were doing like nested sampler stuff. I don't
Yes.
even know what that means, but highlighting like the specific like theory and technical understanding that you have of the subject area can be really, really important as well. Yeah, so I love that comment. Anat, any suggestions you want to make on that front?
Yeah, so as I've already said like a bunch of times already, so I didn't get started with Camellia for GSoC. I just wanted to get a feel of Julia itself. So Camellia was basically the first bit of real Julia code that I wrote. So I wanted to learn the language actually working on packages, and it felt like this had the lowest barrier of entry to me at least, as compared to Flux and DiffEQ and the whole SIML ecosystem and all that at that point. So yeah, so I barely had any Julia knowledge at that point. I did have experience with other programming languages like C, C++, JavaScript, Python, and all that. But then this was the first time that I had experience with Julia. And yeah, it turned out pretty great.
I love that. Cool. Let's go to the next question. Arbit asking 175 hour versus 300 hours. Is it something that should be mentioned by the student or the mentor? So all of the projects on the on the Julia website under the Google Summer of Code section should have hours specified. It should already say on the project page whether it's 175 hours or 300 hours. So if it doesn't say for that project, definitely ask the mentor and reach out. Because you need to know that. I think when you actually do the application, you have to specify whether it's a 175 hour or a 300 hour difference. And I think, Arbit, you had another follow-up, which was your proposal may require more than 175 hours. Is it okay if you start working? Yes, you can start working before the GSoC period. The disclaimer is always that you could start working and we don't have any control over what happens. Google could come back to us and say, you get one Google Summer of Code slot this year. Like that's all you get. We have no control over it. So you can go in and start making contributions, but go in with the knowledge that that doesn't mean that you're going to get selected for Google Summer of Code. And, we might not have the slot or the funds to actually pay you to do that development work. Hopefully we will. Especially if you're doing great work and it's helpful and beneficial for the community, but we can't promise and guarantee that is actually going to happen because it's so out of our control with respect to Google Summer of Code. So hopefully that is helpful and answers the question. But another piece here, Mert's asking, does making non-technical contributions help you get selected for Google Summer of Code, for Julia Summer of Code? I've got my opinions on this, but interested if anyone has any thoughts.
It
I can
definitely
go
doesn't.
first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think non-technical contributions are a great way to get noticed by a mentor and also to understand what exactly goes on in the code that you're trying to understand in whatever project or package or ecosystem. But I'm not entirely sure having a non-technical project will help you for GSoC or JSoC. That will need to be technical as far as I know. So yeah, but it's a great way to get started at least, because you got to start somewhere. And documentation is basically where I started. So I have strong opinions about that. But it's a great way to learn what code you're going to be writing and what code you need to be supporting and, what code's already out there that you need to be using.
Yeah, I agree. Luca, you want to add something there?
Yeah, I was starting to say that it definitely doesn't hurt. And also, if you think like a real project, most problems are not technical, are social. Like if the project gets stuck, it's not because you don't find the person that doesn't find the correct line of code to fix a bug. It's because people had different opinion and there's need for negotiation. And also, so if your non-technical contribution could be like push a community of thousands of people ahead by solving a conflict, then it's fantastic. And also if you think like how people get noticed and how languages get noticed, like because people are enthusiastic about it and then write their own blog posts and share their opinion. So if your technical contribution is I wrote this great blog post and now my company is using Julia, then I mean you automatically get quite a lot of respect. So non-technical contributions are anyway like the true heart of open source communities. The coding is, there's a lot of coding, but it's not just coding. So it's definitely a great way to get noticed in the community and in general and get experience and get contact and start working.
Yeah, Luca, I love that. And I actually have a shirt that's one of my favorite shirts, and it says that there's more to open source than code. And that's actually one of the images that's on the, if you go to the contributors guide for the Julia website, which I'll send, it has that image as well. And I totally agree. I think the challenge is that, again, for Google Summer of Code, it is an inherently technical program. Like the idea is to write code. So just demonstrating non-technical contributions might not be enough if you don't have some sort of technical contribution as well. But I think the two combined, like that's what we want. We want people who can sort of marry those two things together. So again, Mert, if you can demonstrate some of the non-technical work, like I know you're doing a bunch of stuff in the PyData community and on the Discord and stuff like that, demonstrating that sort of work in conjunction with pull requests, code contributions is going to be super helpful in your application. It's a great question. Another one coming in from Ashwani: better to work on PRs related to issues in an ecosystem or work directly on the project that I am proposing? Interested, Saranjit, any suggestions here? What you think would be best?
I can speak from my experience. So when I started, I was working on a different. So there was a ecosystem, the Turing team, and I was interested in a topic on Monte Carlo in general. But as I started contributing and interacting, we figured out that there is another niche area that would need work. So I had moved from the point that I started to this niche point, which actually became my proposal. So if you are clear in your mind what your proposal is about, if you have spoken with your mentor on that topic, then fine, go ahead with that proposal or project and start your PRs. But if you're not, then it would be nice to start in the general ecosystem and then try to narrow down to the topic that you might be interested in and your mentor might be interested in.
No, I love that. I think that's totally right. Big, huge plus one. Luca, Anant, anything you wanna add to that?
Not really. I just think, like she said, having clarity on what you think your project is going to look like 3 months down the line is what's most important. So if you're really clear what your project is going to be and what needs to be done for that, you can just directly start, fleshing out PRs for that itself. And more often than not, you will be depending on other parts of the ecosystems as well. And you might end up needing to contribute to that as well. That's just part and parcel of the process. But then, yeah, I think it just largely depends on how much clarity you have. And if you don't have much clarity as well, just get started and start contributing to general issues. That's a great way to get noticed. And once you get noticed that way, you can just approach one of the maintainers of the project and be like, okay, I've been contributing to this project a while now. What would you like to see implemented in this particular project or this part of the ecosystem? And they always have ideas. There's always work to be done in open source. So that'd be a great way for you to get started as well.
Yeah, I really agree. And I think the other piece too, and Saranjit, you alluded to this, is like really making those ecosystem contributions can actually be really instrumental in the success of your actual project. Like if you understand the context, the full context of that project, how it's being, if it's a package that's being used upstream or downstream by some other packages, like it can be really important to get that context and helping you be successful further down the line in GSoC. So I do think that making those contributions to the ecosystem can be really beneficial. Luca, you want to add anything else to this one?
No, nothing particular. That's actually what I did before getting started. I opened a few PRs in the Julia intervals ecosystem where I was working, so it
Nice.
works.
Yeah, it works. You got three endorsements here. LW is asking where you can get my hat. Shoot me a message on Slack and I'll send you a special link. But it's I had to have it custom made, and honestly, I don't really like it that much. So maybe you want to get a different hat. I have to make a new one. But yeah, Julia hats, very cool. Luca has the which Julia shirt is that, Luca?
It's the JuliaCon from last year.
Oh, nice. Is it the REPL one? Oh, no, it's not.
No, it's the traditional one with the logo there.
We've got a bunch of cool, super cool JuliaCon shirts for this year. So stay tuned. It'll be exciting. Another question asking about if you all can reiterate what you did for your projects. I'll send folks. You can just scroll back on YouTube really quick, see what Luca and Saranjit did, and then scroll back to the recent conversation, and that way we'll save them from having to say what they did again. But the way to get access to proposal templates, I sent the link in the chat. We have a proposal template on the Julia website, and then again. Saranjit and not Luca might post their application if they still have it around and they want to in the GSoC channel on Slack, or you can reach out to other students who were successful previous Google Summer of Code students. So we don't have any of them on the website right now, but they're definitely around. Let's see, any other questions? Do you think it's worth investing time to learn Julia if we want to use it purely professionally, not as an academic? In Central Europe, hardly anyone hires. Well, this is a more general Julia question. I think just because we already have it up, I think it is definitely worth learning. A lot of companies in the US hiring folks remotely. So I would, Julia Computing, for example, a bunch of people all over the world, Europe, India, the US, all working on doing Julia stuff. So it's definitely worth learning, Emil, if you're interested. And will it change? Yes, of course, over time, more folks will use Julia and more folks will be hiring for it across different ecosystems and industries. So definitely now is the right time to learn. Cool. Let's see if there was other people asking questions about data science and machine learning. I'm sorry, we will not answer those questions in this live stream, but really good questions for discourse, for example, if you're interested. And I think those are all the questions that I've seen. I know we've been going for almost 45 minutes now. We'll wrap it up with just any sort of general high level last minute suggestions for folks. Again, we're just to give the context, we're 3 days away from the deadline for applications. So applications close on Tuesday the 19th. I don't know what time of the day. Right now it's Sunday when this live stream is being recorded. So we've still got a couple of days. Luca, we'll start with you. For somebody who's maybe just stumbled into this live stream, knows what Julia is, wants to sort of get from right now to an application on the 19th, any suggestions? I know we're asking you to, make a miracle happen, but what would your suggestions be for somebody who hasn't maybe reached out to a mentor yet between now and Tuesday?
Definitely reach out to the mentor. That's like the core, like communication, and be transparent. Be like very, very honest. Be transparent. Don't try to look like smarter than what you are, because I mean, it's not if the mentor is someone who has been longer than you in open source. It simply means that has been doing mistakes longer and knows how things go. So you don't need to look like Superman who has all the answers to the universe, but just be honest, talk to people, get started. Like it's way more impressive if you say, hey, I would be interested in this, so here is my idea, I tried this and I was thinking to open the PR, than just saying, yeah, I would be interested, so I could do this, I could do that, what do you think I should do? So be active. Better sorry than safe, or whatever. Get started. Open PRs, open issues, contact mentors, and
I love it.
communicate.
Wonderful. Anat, any suggestions for folks in these last couple of days?
Yeah, I'd say just go for it. I mean, just apply for GSoC. Worst case, you're not going to get selected, but then that's fine. You can just apply again next year, especially now that it's open for everyone. And I'd say the most important piece of advice that I'd have to anyone applying for GSoC really is, one, communicate with your mentor, and two, the much more important thing is do it for the love of open source. Don't just do it just because you want to do GSoC or you want to do something for the summer or you want that GSoC tag or anything. Just do it because you like open source work, and GSoC is a great way that facilitates that for you and makes it easier to support whatever side things you might have going on. So yeah, so even if you don't get selected, if you're doing it for the love of open source, it doesn't really matter because you'll just keep contributing anyways. Like, you're bound to get selected if you apply.
Yeah, I love that. And I think honestly, Luca and Saranjit, you all are a great testament to this, given like you're all still active in the open source community. Like there definitely are folks who contribute to GSoC and then they just disappear off into the dust afterwards, which is fine. I mean, that's what happens. But I think you all have stuck around and continue to contribute in a bunch of different ecosystems and communities, which I think is awesome. And like that's the point of GSoC, is get students involved in open source, keep them in open source, and have them continue to make those contributions. Saranjit, we'll close with any of your suggestions for students.
I would say don't chase for perfection. Try to remember. This was my rule, that whatever was the deadline, I would subtract 1 day from it and assume that that is the deadline. So just submit your applications as soon as you can. Once you're selected, talk to your mentors, be open, share your problems. Take this as a learning journey with its ups and downs, and I'm confident you will have a great experience with GSoC.
I love that. I appreciate all three of you for being part of this, answering questions, sharing your perspective, and for being part of the Julia community in general. So I'm grateful to all three of you. This was awesome, ton of fun. Thanks for folks who asked questions. And again, if you have questions, other thoughts, the GSoC channel on the Julia Lang Slack is the place to be. Go there, ask questions, and good luck with your applications. We'll catch you on Slack. Take care, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Right?
Bye.
Bye.